I have been putting this video off for a while because it felt weird releasing a video when there's so much going on in America right now. As a privileged white male growing up in America, I have been given most things that I have. The right to be able to talk to you guys is one of those privileges. I do not think that I am a leader, nor do I have any answers. I think the most important thing I can do is to just be open, to talk, and to listen. Now, I don't know if just throwing money at an issue will fix it, but I do think it shows unity within our community if we can all come together and help one another. With that being said, DifferentFight is having a stream on Monday, June 8th. It will be a donation stream to the Black Lives Matter movement. If you are free, I think you should definitely check it out. And even if you don't have money to donate, just talking about the issue, I think is a great step in the right direction. Thank you if you listen through that. It means a lot. Now to get on to the more lighthearted deck tech. One thing that was really interesting to watch while I was working on this deck was Kai from WCC's videos called From Zero to Hero, in which he explains how you can build your Shadow Paladin deck with just the pieces that you have. They are in a different format than my free-to-play videos, so you can feel free to just pause this video, go watch his, and come back here, because I think that they are both important to watch. So the goal of this build is to use the soul charging that Skullface gives to be able to pop off Dark Dictator's ability multiple times in a game. The Dark Dictator is run in a lot of competitive builds because his ability can work on Rearguard, in which you can Soul Blast 3 and give both of your front row Rearguards plus 5k. This can make for a good final turn push in a competitive Shadow build. When I was first building this deck, I was mainly just kind of focusing on riding him because he has a similar ability to Alfred, that he gets plus 2k for every Rearguard you have, but he can't be boosted. But then I was looking at the ability and noticed that it does not have a once per turn clause. It can go off multiple times in a turn if you would like. So to capitalize on that, I really wanted to try out Skullface. He is the Mega Blast for Shadow Paladin, where you can Soul Blast 6, Counter Blast 4, and nuke the board on hit. That ability will probably not be used. It's not impossible, like some Mega Blastin decks. It can go off, but typically we're just trying to use him as a ride target so that we can get consistent soul charging, so that we can very easily pop off Dark Dictator's ability 2 times in a game. Now going through the rest of the grade 3s, we have 4 Dark Mage. He is not as good in this deck compared to the more competitive Shadow Paladin build because we are not sacrificing Rearguards, so we do not need the board building as much. It is still nice though, because that means we will be able to make more pressure on the board even before Dark Dictator can pop off. And then the last grade 3 slot, it can be more of whatever you'd like. I'm just playing Fusion because, as you will see with this deck, we have a lot of flexibility in our counterblast. So having a unit that can become a 14 by himself and then the plus 5 off of Dark Dictator, he can be a big boy. Now moving on to the grade 2s, I really need to talk about Curse Lancer. Because this is a free-to-play deck, we are not playing any of the triple rares. We are only playing double rares and below. That being said, if you do not have Curse Lancer, this deck will not work. Curse Lancer is the counter charger for Shadow Paladins. What he enables this deck to do is be able to play a really aggressive play style in the early game, so that when Dark Dictator's ability pops off, we will have our opponent at such a large damage that when we swing in with our Rearguards, they will either have to drop all of their PGs in hand early game, or if they haven't been able to draw it, we win the game. Besides Curse Lancer, you can kind of play whatever you like in the grade 2 slot. I do think 4 of the 10k vanilla is very essential. Same with 4 of the 8k vanilla for the grade 1 slot, because the 18k columns that they can make for magic numbers over cross rides, like the End and Phantom Blaster Overlord. Besides that, whatever you want to play in this 5 is completely up to you. I'm currently playing with 2 Blaster Dark. I think he is very interesting for the deck because he is the only way of retiring It does suck that he has to be on Vanguard to go off. So that means late game, he is just a 9k vanilla. I still think he allows the deck for some early game pressure. The cool thing about the flexibility in our counterblast is that we can kind of play weird grade 2s that Shadow Paladin kind of stays away from, like Vaha. She is the on-hit counterblast 2 draw card. She's usually really bad in Shadow Paladins because you don't really want to be using our counterblast for that, mainly because Nemain is technically better. But because we have Curse Lancer and we don't have any Vanguards that rely on counterblast, Vaha does have a spot in the deck. That being said, we also have another card kind of fighting for that spot in Maka. Maka is on place, you can counterblast 2 and then call a grade 1 from deck and place it behind her. So you kind of have this weird juggling of board or hand between Maka and Vaha. The cool thing with Maka is that she synergizes surprisingly well with Darkside Pegasus. What you can do is you can call Maka, superior call Darkside Pegasus, place it behind her. She is now at 15k column. She can now swing at a rear guard if you'd like. Pegasus can then put the 2k anywhere on the board you'd like. You can put it on Skullface, making him 14, being able to hit for cross ride. Or you can give it to Maka, making it so that she is a 17k column, being able to hit over MLB magic numbers. Now the last grade 1 we haven't talked about yet is the Witch. She allows us hand filtering. So if we are missing a Dark Dictator, we can go get him. So if we are needing countercharging with Curse Lancer, or if we are needing board pressure with Dark Dictator, we can kind of go look for them. So the reason I'm playing Creeping Dark Go as my starter was I was originally playing Full Bow, which I'll talk about in a second. The reason I decided to go for Dark Go was because I kind of like that he can guarantee us either Skullface or Dark Dictator if we're missing one or the other. He can get retired, which would kind of suck because then our soul will be down 1. But because we have, like I said, a lot of flexibility in our counterblasting, it doesn't really hinder the deck to be able to do that. Now for other budget options in the deck, like I was saying, I think there is a debate that can be made between Full Bow or Dark Go in this free-to-play deck, even without Phantom Blaster Dragon. So that means instead of playing the Witch, you will then play Blaster Javelin. The thing with Full Bow is that he guarantees you a search for Blaster Dark, which will allow you the possibility of retiring on turn 2. He also guarantees that when Dark Dictator comes out, we will have at least 3 cards in soul. If something happens to go, that means there is a chance that if you have to ride Dark Dictator, that you will only have 2 cards in soul. I decided against him just because there were a lot of games where then I would just draw a Blaster Javelin and then he's just a 6k vanilla the rest of the game. Or you don't ride Blaster Javelin and then nothing ends up plussing. I would just choose to rather have Goat, which is consistent and does something, rather than have Full Bout, which is, I think it goes off more than it doesn't, surprisingly, because you can mulligan for him very well. I just preferred the Dark Goat. Now, Dark Panther was something I was considering, because in case you were ever down a card in soul, like if you had 5 cards in soul, and you wanted to go for a final game push, you could call Nightmare Painter out, get that 6th card in soul, Soul Blast 6, give plus 10k to the rear guards. The thing I decided against was that the neg that she gives us in hand just hurts a little too much for this deck, especially because we don't have Nemains. If you want to play her, I would play more Vaha just to get more draw. Also, she can do some cool stuff if you have Phantom Blaster Overlord out and then a Phantom Blaster Dragon in hand to get those cross ride numbers. Now, like I said, you can play any grade 2 that you have. I feel like they all have a slot in the deck. Now, something I really want to talk about is Dark Metal Dragon. The thing with Dark Metal Dragon is that when you first look at him, he looks like trash, right? He is a 10k vanilla on Vanguard. He is a 14k attacker. That's all. Now, think of Waterfall for a second. Waterfall is an 11k base. He gets plus 3k on attack, and you can ditch a card and give him plus 10k. That's a triple rare. Dark Metal Dragon kind of does 70% of the job of Waterfall. If he is boosted by an 8k, or with Dark Pegasus in some way, he will be able to hit for magic numbers. I get that having a 10k butt on Vanguard Circle really does suck, but in this budget deck, everything's a 10k. So I feel like there is some cool plays that can be played with Dark Metal Dragon. So if you'd like to play him, just throw in 9 crits and just like go face. Now, upgrades for the deck. Obviously, you're going to want to add in your Phantom Blaster Dragons, your Phantom Blaster Overlords, and of course your Nemains. Once you start getting some Nemains, start taking out your Vahas and your Makas, because she's just a better plus. And then start taking out your Skull Faces for your Phantom Blaster Dragons. Now, I would not start adding in Masquerade until you have at least 3 Phantom Blasters, either Overlord or Dragon. Because if you have to call him without them, like if you have Dark Dictator out or Skullface, he is just a 9k vanilla. He doesn't do anything. And I feel like the risk of him being a 9k is not worth it until you start having a more consistent way of getting to your Phantom Blaster Dragons. Now, something to remember. You can get the promo art Phantom Blaster Dragon for 200 medals out of the shop. Now, that does mean you can't get a skin, because that's the equivalent. If Shadow Paladin is your thing and you really want to play it, I would just get him as soon as possible, just because he adds so much power and control to the board that Shadow Paladin really needs to be able to compete. Feel free to play around with your trigger lineup. I'm playing 4 crit, 5 draw, 4 heal. I'm playing around with the crit just to give me some early game pressure, so that hopefully when we go for the Dark Dictator push, they are at 4 or 5 damage a lot earlier than they want to be. Now, with that said, I do think there is some debate of playing stands in the deck because we can get our rear guards to such a big number. The only reason I'm not playing stands is because until Dark Dictator pops off, they are quite small. So I'd rather have the early game pressure that crits give rather than the late game pressure that stands do. So with Dark Dictator, he will always go off at least once a game. This is because we don't have any other soul blasting in the deck besides Skullface. But like I said, if Skullface goes off, you're going to win. Now, the thing about using Dark Dictator's Soul Blast is that timing is very important. You obviously don't want to use it if your opponent has 2 interceptors. You want to save it for a late game push in which your opponent is low on resources and has to call a grade 3 to the front row. Even if you do have to swing one of your rear guards at an interceptor, if you can guarantee a second hit with your rear guard, that's a good time to pop Dark Dictator. Now, rewriting Skullface is another way of accumulating soul quickly. When you ride Skullface on turn 3, your soul count will go to 4. If you then ride another Skullface, that will then immediately take you to 6 because of your soul charging during the main phase. This means that you can then pop Dark Dictator's ability twice on turn 4. This does require a little bit more setup, but this is just in this case of early game aggression. Even if you do not get the reride, you will still be able to pop it off by turn 5. Now, I guess there is a debate on that is a little too late for an aggro deck to be able to go off. This is a free play deck. That's what we're working with. Now, going up against the meta, if you are playing the full bow version, that means you will consistently be able to get to Blaster Dark, which means you will have a way of dealing with Wingle Brave and Conroe when going up against MLB and Dota. And Dope. I think the deck that you actually might have possibly the easiest time going up against is Shadows. In my experience, I had a lot of an easier time out-tempoing them. They have to pay a lot of attention to their counterblast use. They are using quite an abundance of it with their Nemains, their Phantom Blaster Dragons, and even their Phantom Blaster Overlords. So I guess my biggest tip with Shadows then is just to kind of make sure that they are always on edge with their counterblast. If they don't have any counterblasts open, only give them 1 so that their Phantom Blaster Dragon can't pop the board. If they are at 3 damage, have a counterblast up, and you know that they're going to be able to pop next turn no matter what, go ham, dude. Take them to 5 if you can. That way on the next turn that you can hopefully be able to push for game, because we can go a lot more wide on the board than they can typically. So my final thoughts for the deck is that when you're looking at a competitive Shadow build and you're seeing the 12 triple rares that these decks are playing, it can be very discouraging. Having to possibly pay hundreds of dollars just to play a virtual deck can feel very off-putting. While in reality, you can definitely build this like incomplete Shadow deck and still climb because Shadows are that strong. What I really like about the pieces in this rare and double rare category is it kind of reminds me of Dark Irregulars in that the skeleton of the deck is very easy to build upon, where other decks feel like the rare package plays differently than what the triple rare package is trying to do. You can just kind of start throwing in whatever triple rares you start pulling into this deck, and it will just slowly get stronger and stronger. If you're an edge boy and you didn't pull very well, you didn't get your Phantom Blaster Dragons, you didn't pull the waifu in the main, don't worry. Build this deck. Look at any other free-to-play deck that's out there. There is always a way to build the deck that you care the most about. Thank you for watching. I never know how to end these. That's all I got.